Welcome to Conversations, Season 2 of the MTA podcast series, a weekly audiocast featuring interviews with leading investment strategists, geopolitical experts, and other key thought leaders. Brought to you by the Market Technicians Association.
Welcome to Conversations, the official MTA podcast interviews. My name is Alex Spiroglou, and today I'm joined by Ralph Acampora, Managing Director, Market Analytics for Altera Wealth Management. Ralph and I will be going through his profile. And Ralph, welcome to the show.
Hi Alex, thanks for having me. It's a great time.
Yeah, it's great to meet you as well. Could you please give us some information about your personal and educational background before technical analysis became a part of your life?
That's a great question. I love to tell people that I have a history, political science background in college. And I spent 3 years in a Catholic seminary, and I have theology. And I was this close to getting a master's in scripture. So you can see I have a very, very big background in technical analysis. So when I came to the street, I was very, very fortunate to be able to not have a financial background and yet be able to get into technical analysis, and fell in love with the subject, and that's been my whole life ever since.
Which brings me to my next question. How did you actually get involved with technical analysis? How did you meet technical analysis?
Like many people, by accident. Literally, the first job I had in Wall Street, I was a young statistician. Actually, I was just keeping records. In those days, no computers. And one of the first books they made me read was the Edwards and McGee book. And out of the blue, I'm just reading about technical analysis. And part of my job was maintaining a point and figure library. I did that for about a year or so. And I went to the New York Institute of Finance, the School of Wall Street, to learn about stocks and bonds because of my different background. And one of the classes I took was with Alan Shaw, the famous technician, and I just badgered him until he hired me. And that was in 1969, and it's been just a fun ride ever since.
Given that you're one of the founding members of the Market Technicians Association, could you give us a bit of the background and the history of behind the formation of the MTA?
Great question. Wall Street at that time, research was really starting to become very, very important. I mean, it was always important, but the structure of research, by that I mean there were formal analysts and formal analyst associations. The big one was the New York Society of Security Analysts. That's where corporate America met Wall Street. They would literally have lunches at the Society of Analysts. And it was from there that the fundamentalists would interchange ideas. And they had splinter groups where the chemical analysts met and the drug analysts met. And so young analysts like myself were kind of involved, but we never had a structure where we could network amongst ourselves. And I met a young analyst at the time named Johnny Brooks, and Johnny and I were just two energetic fellows, and we said, heck, if we can't be part of the New York Society, why don't we start our own little subgroup? So I went back to Alan Shaw, my boss, and he went back to his boss, and they said, okay, we'll help you young men, and that was the beginning of it. And the whole essence, and exactly what you're doing, I'm so proud of what you're doing here, Alex, the whole essence is just to have a forum to sit down and talk and network, that's all. And in the process of doing that, you come up with new creative ideas, and the thing starts to grow. And we, the next thing we wanted to create was a library, and that happened in 1975. And I don't know, about 10 years later, we said, gee, we have to have an exam. And I just love the progress. It's been great.
Thank you. Could you give us a bit more your outlook for the MTA, your vision for the MTA going forward for the next few years?
Well, that's a great question too. I was asked that question not too long ago, and someone said to me, well, you had the original vision, how are we doing? And I said, well, you guys are doing great. The young generation of technicians, you have so much more available to you, you know. And the growth of the MTA over the last 8, 9, 10 years has been spectacular. And part of that has a lot to do with that we we went from a volunteer organization, it was just volunteers, where at the main office we started to hire an executive director who in turn hires people and answers directly to the board. And the MTA had to learn how to direct the director. In the very beginning we were kind of afraid that, gee, we wouldn't be doing this in a proper manner. We did. And you can see the website is improving. It's so exciting because all new ideas, no one says no, let's try. So the future of the MTA, I think, is extremely bright. The revenues years and years ago in the beginning mainly came from dues and the annual seminar. Well, that's not the case today. Of course, the annual dues pay for the rent and things, but I think the big source of revenue is definitely from the CMT exam. And that is growing dramatically because people around the world realize that something happened in the marketplace in the last few years, and there's something more than just what they were doing. And they know and need some tactical approach. And so we're in the right place at the right time, the MTA. And more and more people are asking us for the exam, and because it's accepted by FINRA, all of these hurdles and all of these accomplishments we made in the last 10 years, it just have been so positive for technical analysis. So I think that the future is extremely bright, and I think it has a lot to do with the exam.
Brilliant. Which brings me to my next question. Could you give us a bit of a behind-the-scenes story of the FINRA certification, for FINRA accepting the CMT for the Series 86 exemption?
Yeah, well, that's it goes back a few years. Actually, in 2001, note the date, August 2001, a month before 9/11, in my apartment, which is 3 blocks from Ground Zero, the MTA came to my apartment, my old friends, and said, "Gee, Ralph, we'd like to have you come back and become president again, and there are a couple of little problems we need some help." And I said, only on one condition. I said that if I see anything broken, I fix it. I said, "Please, thank you." Well, unbeknownst to anybody, that a month later we just lost everything. The MTA literally started from zero, and we lost our library, which breaks my heart. But it was that starting point. And Johnny Brooks called it a summit. We had a summit meeting in our second location in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And here I am, the president. I hadn't an idea of what the everyday goings on of the organization was, so it was a learning curve for me. And I said to everybody, I want you to come with your wish list. And I want you to come with the list that things you don't like and things that you want. And for 2 days we did that. And at the end of it I said, okay, you want T1 lines put in so we can start doing, and it was in the early days, we started doing electronic mails, maybe electronic meetings, and I said, and this was a wish. And I said, okay, I have your desires, the members. I said, I'm going to take it to the board, and we start changing. And the board said, yes, and we started changing. And shortly thereafter, I realized that the MTA needed more than that. We were growing as an organization, and volunteers, we couldn't, it was too much work for volunteers. Everybody has a day job. So I went back to the board and I said, I think maybe now we should hire an executive director or an outside consultant. And the man that we hired was a fellow by the name of Ken Preston. He turned the New York Society of Security Analysts around. So Ken did a survey of our organization and came back and recommended that we hire an executive director, and we change the structure of the organization to be more business-like. And that was quantum leaps. And just look at what Tom Severi has done the last few years, and Tim Lecitra. I mean, and all the ladies and guys in the office have just been spectacular. So that grew. And in the process of doing that, I realized the CMT exam was was imploding. We couldn't, again, as a volunteer organization, we couldn't handle the demands that were being made. So I outsourced the exam. And in the process of outsourcing the exam, we all learned a new word in our vocabulary. It's called psychometrics. Psychometrics is the science of giving tests. And all major tests, college entrance exams, all these CFA, it's all psychometrically done, which means that they do a survey of the members, and if 10% of the members do Elliott Wave, then 10% of Elliott Wave is going to be on the exam. So all of this, and they test the question. Very, very sophisticated. Once we did that, and we had our exams psychometrically done, That was in, I'm going to say 2002 or 3. 2004, Sarbanes-Oxley law comes out. Now I'm going to answer your original question. And Sarbanes-Oxley law said that all analysts in Wall Street had to take 2 exams, Series 86 and 87. 87 is rules and regulations, no problems. We all took that. But Series 86 meant the only way an analyst such as myself, and it affected me personally and professionally, the only way I could be continuing being an analyst, I had to have levels 1 and 2, the equivalency of the CFA. Now, I stood there dumbfounded. I said, my gosh, I'm an analyst 40 years. If I could pass the CFA exam, which would have been hard for me, if I could pass, I knew I wouldn't use it every day in my work. So I turned to the MTA, and Jordan Kotick was the president at that time. I said, Jordan, we got to take the money out of our treasury and fight this, because if we don't, then I don't think the MTA deserves to be a professional organization standing up for its members. And he said, you're absolutely right. So the board got behind it. David Krell, who, God bless him, steps in. He was a past president of the MTA. He knew how to handle the bureaucracy of the FINRA people. Actually, it wasn't FINRA at the time. We had to deal with the 3 exchanges: the New York Stock Exchange, the American Stock Exchange, and the NASD. So we had to do all this. And David was unbelievably helpful. And when we were sitting down with the New York Stock Exchange, the first time that David and I met, and we're talking, and they weren't too excited about helping technical analysis or anything, but I happened to mention the word psychometrics. And the head fellow at the stock exchange said, what are you talking about psychometrics? And I said, our exam is psychometrically done. And the lady across the table who wrote the Series 86 and 87 test, she says, what exam? And I told them about the exam and how we outsourced it. And the man said to me, this is the truth, he said to me, if your exam was not psychometrically done, you wouldn't be allowed in the elevator of this building. So that meant that we had a second meeting with them. And David and I walk out of that building and said, wow. And then the MTA, lawyers, psychometricians, academicians, we had everybody. It took us a solid year. And I have to say that the stock exchanges put us through the hoops. And it was good because it was self-evaluating, and we had to answer a lot of questions, and we changed in the process. In March of 2005, FINRA comes out and says, Rule 344 has been amended. There are officially 2 analysts in Wall Street now. One's a fundamental analyst who follows companies, has a CFA. Second analyst is a technical analyst who follows stocks, has a CMT. I mean, the establishment understands and recognizes the difference. One is not better than the other. They're equal. This is wonderful. And I think it's the most exciting thing to happen in my career.
Okay, Ralph, now let's switch back from the MTA to you. Could you please describe your day-to-day responsibilities and the most challenging aspects of your job?
Good. Well, I retired in 2007, and I went to the New York Institute of Finance, which I teach at night for 41 years. I'm very proud of that. So I started working full-time, and I went to China and India and Egypt and all these different places for technical analysis. It was a lot of fun. Then I received a phone call from my cousin Tony Acampora in Geneva, Switzerland. He says, no, you got to come out of retirement. And he and I always wanted to do something all our lives. And so we started a company called Altera, which is actually a star. And we now, to make a very long story short, we now run a UCITS fund here in Europe. It's primarily technical. I start out looking at portfolios. I start out looking at the world, and my universe of ETFs is the portfolio. And I look at the world technically, and if I, let's say, think if things are well in Europe or Latin America or whatever, I will start to do my fundamental homework and pull together a portfolio that way. So, and we're going to be launching very soon here in the United States, so I'm excited about that. Big challenge. What is something that's really very different in my life? You know, all these years I was an analyst and a writer and had lots of fun. I think running money is a lot harder because it's, number one, it's real money, and you see the people across the table and it's their money, and all the emotions in the world come to play. And hopefully the technical keeps me less emotional. It's quite a challenge. It's different for me.
So, in that process, could you, of managing money, can you give us a talk about your favorite tools and techniques? What is your specialty techniques in your decision-making process?
Yeah. I created, I can't give you the details necessarily right now, but, and then this is nothing special, but you think about someone running money. What are the two most important things for that individual to do? Number one, make a profit. So that means absolute price hopefully goes up, okay? And the second thing is to perform. That means it has to do better than the average, or whatever index you have. So one is absolute price and the other is comparative relative strength. It's the only two things that are important. So that's the core of what I do. I want to make money, hopefully, for people, and I want to see if I can beat the index. And by the way, there are only 9 combinations of price and relative. Only 9 pictures. I won't say that's my secret. I don't know, I can give you a little bit more, but that's the core, the heart of what I do. And if I start seeing shifts in my 9 figures, it either gets me more excited or less excited about areas that I want to be in. And the ETFs allow me literally to be global. So I start out, and this is what I tell my clients, I start out looking at the world technically, not fundamentally, not economically, technically. Then when I feel that I have a view, hopefully a positive view or something like that, I try to combine the fundamentals technical and support that view. If I can't support that view, then I have to change.
And what have been the greatest influences in your career, your 40 years of career? And for example, if I ask you to recommend your top 3 or 5 books, which one these would be?
Wow. Top 5 books. If I went back to the old days, the McGee book, I guess everybody cut their teeth on. If you haven't read it, you should, or at least have it in your library, and every once in a while when you can't sleep at night, open the book, because it's a wonderful book. But having said that, I think Charlie Kirkpatrick's book is a great modern day version of that. And Charlie and Julie Kirkpatrick have done a great job I think of bringing it to the fore. I think Steve Nissen's book on candlesticks is a completely, go to the man who actually brought it and made it popular. I think those would be the 3 books I would read.
Brilliant. And okay, let's switch to technical analysis axioms. From your experience of this past 40 years, if you had to give advice to someone, like very briefly, 2 or 3 things, what would these be? For example, don't fight the trend or don't fight the Fed. If you can instill your knowledge in like 3 or 4 actions, which would these be?
Number 1, and we get very sophisticated today, and we have so many indicators and back test everything. Number 1, never forget price. I always tell price is the thing that dictates what I do, and I don't want to get complicated because I'm not. But follow price trends. And you're saying don't fight the trend, but you're basically talking about price. So I have to start with price, and then later I'll add my 1 or 2 popular indicators. So I would caution people and encourage them to do that. Just respect price. Second thing is the essence of technical analysis. Technical analysis really is a tool for all of us to identify change. You have to be able to, hopefully, identify the change, but more importantly, change if you have to change. You have to have the strength to make the change. A lot of people can do technical analysis, but just can't pull that trigger. You have to have the discipline to pull that trigger. And discipline is what technical analysis is all about. So price and discipline.
And which brings me to the last question of this interview. Fun facts about Ralph. How do you relax outside of market hours, and do you have any hobbies? What makes your mind wander off of markets?
Well, I used to be, when I was younger, I used to like to jog and do things like that, but I have a very bad back, so I don't do any of that. I married a wonderful lady 9 years ago, and Rosemary loves dogs, and we have the biggest dog you've ever seen. His name is Sammy. It's short for Samson. He's an English Mastiff. He weighs 216 pounds, and he's still a puppy. But the little cat, we had Samson, and we have to have Delilah. So little Delilah runs Samson. So that's kind of cute. My hobbies, actually, I have a new hobby. I like to read, and I have this very extensive library that I collected over the years. And everybody said, well, you just bought the books because they look good in your library. I said, no, before I put this bag of bones in the ground, I'm going to read every one of these books. So that's what I'm doing. And part of this extensive library, I have a biography of all the American presidents. So I started a couple of months ago with George Washington. Now I'm up to James Buchanan, and that's number 15th president, and everything in between. It is so fascinating. And I got to keep reading. So I enjoy, and I'm making notes, and what was their hobby, and what was their favorite food, and what went on in the White House, and who got married in the White House, and it's kind of cute. Maybe I'll put out a little booklet someday, just as fun.
Brilliant, and that concludes our today's interview. A big thank you to Ralph Acampora. Thank you very much, Ralph.
Thanks, Alex. Great.